Hello everyone, this is John June Angel, and I came home this afternoon and was out in the garden, and I noticed that my trident my old trident Shohin was starting to really move. So I thought, well, I needed to repot it, so I thought I'd take a few pictures along the way. It had been mulched in the garden, so you can see that it still has a bunch of mulch and stuff on top of it here. Um, but you can also see that the buds are starting to move, so it was definitely time. So my first goal really is to clean off all this nasty mulch. Um, Tell me that roots don't grow in the wintertime. This tree was clean, the bottom of this pot was clean before it went in to the mulch, so that just goes to show you that trees do put on roots in the wintertime. Alright, I've cleaned off some of the mulch, some of the old moss that was on there. Now it's time to take the tree out of the pot. Notice the side of this pot has kind of a lip on it. Sometimes these are hard to get out. I actually had to, I used a chopstick through the bottom of it to push it up. So there's the roots. This is only 1 year. So this tree was repotted last spring. Um, Time to get started combing out some of these roots. You can see how they're kind of growing in a circle now. So time to clean all that out and start it over fresh. So I use chopsticks to comb out the roots. When it's wound up like this, I'll start by combing those out first and getting those long, stretching those out. Then I'll begin to work on the upper edge and comb straight out from the trunk, trying to straighten those roots and comb those roots out. Oftentimes I'll use 2 chopsticks to do this. Just makes the work a little bit faster. Depends on how detailed I'm trying to be. The roots are all combed out. Time to cut them off. I just take the scissors now and give it a haircut there at the base of the root ball. The underneath of this tree, it's hard to tell from this picture, but there's kind of a concave area, and this is the base of the trunk where the original roots were cut off. So it's all calloused over now and hard, but it leaves a big pocket under this tree. So something to pay attention to when you go to repot it. Okay, so now the roots have been cleaned up. It's ready to go back into a pot. So I'm going to choose to put it back in the same pot this year. Maybe not the best pot, but this tree seems to be happy in it. So positioning it in the pot, trying to find the front. I have messed with a couple of different fronts on this tree. I'm not sure. I kind of like this front better, but I don't like this big scar here. But this tree has some problems. It's got some reverse taper here and some wire scars, but it's something to play with, and eventually that'll hopefully all be hidden by ramifications. So, time to prepare the pot. I use just this, I'm not even sure what you call it. I get it at the craft store. I think they use it for needlepoint, something like that. It's just a plastic. I cut a piece to fit in. In this situation, it's a small pot. I'm going to cut one big piece to cover both holes. And then I don't even tie it down. I just use the wire that I tie the tree down with to hold it in place. So I'm going to use 1mm aluminum wire to tie this tree in place with. And I'll pull out a piece that's about 2, maybe 2.5 times as long as the pot. Then I'll double it over and cut off that piece. Then I take the two ends where it was doubled over. I feed it through underneath the pot, up the other side, and then I'll snip this edge. Okay, so now the pot's ready, the wires are ready. I do prefer 4 wires to 2 wires. You can just hold a tree in place better, and there's really, in my experience, nothing more important than keeping the tree steady in the pot. I live in a really windy area, and if my trees are not tied into the pots properly, they wiggle around in the pots, they break off those little root tips, and they don't do well. So make sure you really do a good job of securing your tree in the pot. Let's look a little more at it. Okay, I cut the wires and I folded them over just to get them out of the way. I'm going to add a little soil into the bottom of the pot. I'm also going to add a little soil into that hole in the bottom, in the base of the tree. This will just help make sure there's no air pockets in there, and nothing, hopefully nothing bad happens in there. Flip the tree over using my hand to keep the soil in there, and then slip it into the pot. Once again, adjust it, make sure it's really settled in. I use my fingers and hold the tree and kind of work it into place. Making sure. Now I'm ready to feed the wires in and or secure the tree, and sometimes it's you don't want to go over roots, you don't want to scar a root, so I'll go under a root. In this case, I just fed the wire under this root, and that's where I fed it under the root, and now I'm going to match it up with the other wire and give it a twist. I'll use my gin pliers to pull this. There we go, that looks a little better. Use my gin pliers to twist the wire more. The secret here is to pull gently towards you, and sometimes you can use the other hand to kind of hold this tree in place, and then twist. So pull and twist until you snug that wire down. You can see there after several twists. Then I clip off the ends, and I push the tag end down so that it won't stick me as I'm putting soil in. Some people will choose to wire the tree in after the soil is in place. I find I do it both ways. I guess when a tree has a nice root base like this one, it's very easy to tie it in, so I didn't put the soil in first, went ahead and just secured the tree in. Other times I might put more soil in before I secure the tree. It just depends on the situation. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add the final soil. I just pile it on, and at this point you can use chopsticks, or I typically prefer to use my fingers here. I can feel it better with my fingers, and I will work that soil all the way down into the roots using my index fingers, 2 fingers at a time, even my thumb. I also like to always make sure and go around the pot like this with my thumb. If you keep the soil up to the edge of the pot, it tends to wash a little bit more, and also if you put moss or something on it, you don't want the water just to run right over, so I try to create a little lip on the edge of the pot. Once all the soil's on and really secured in place, not really on, that didn't sound right, but once I have all the soil, the roots filled in and the soil nice and secure in there, I'll usually do a submerge to water. You notice some of the bark floats off the top, and that's fine, that's no big deal. Alright, at this point, with new soil on a tree, I usually like to put something on it to keep it from washing when I water. Typically I'll use sphagnum moss, chopped up real fine, but today I happen to have some moss, so I put on some green moss. The last thing I like to do is take a fine gravel, and I certainly don't do this for all my trees all the time, but I thought I'd go ahead and show it here. This is just a really fine kind of top dressing gravel, and I've just sprinkled it on over top of the moss, and now I go back and work it in with a brush. This just helps, and I'll end up brushing a lot of it away, but it kind of works it into the cracks between the moss, and for me gives it a little more natural look. Alright, now the finished product. The tree's been repotted, it's ready to go for another season. Just in time for bud break. I'll try to take some more pictures and share pictures as the buds come out. So I hope that was helpful for you, and look for more in the future.